Okay, so I got my little homemade carb synchronization tool set up. I got my two bottles, got them filled with just some coffee so that you can see the color. It's easy to see the color of the water inside. And I got my little fittings that I made up for both sides, both cylinders. Made that out of brake line, a little bit of brake line, and then I tapped it out to the right size. And you just put them in and got them tubed up. So I already tried to just run up the bike once. And when I did, what I found was the left carburetor pulled down the liquid quite a bit compared to the right carburetor. So I'm just going to try to crank it over now. I didn't even have to start the engine really. I just had to crank it over. And it did that. So let's see what happens to the fluids when I crank it. So you can see it drew down the left cylinder quite a bit. It actually went down further the last time because it ran for a bit. I don't know why it's not starting right now. Let's give this a try again. So you can see it draws it down pretty quick. Look at that. It just sputtered. It didn't even really start that well. So that'll even out. But yeah, so I'm going to have to make an adjustment, which ought to be a lot of fun because they went and put the adjusting screw down in between those carbs, buried down in there with a lock nut on it. So I'm going to have to get in there and get that done. So that'll be next, get in there and adjust that. Okay, so I just finished doing this and I got it. So I've got the engine off now so you can hear me. I'm going to start it up in a second and show you the tool. So the right carb, or the right cylinder rather, the liquid was rising in it. So in order to get the liquid to fall on the right carb, then you have to turn it counterclockwise. You turn your little adjusting screw counterclockwise, which was a lot of fun. So I ended up, and I'll show you, I ended up taking off, I'll come back, and there we go, sorry I'm upside down. So I ended up taking off the engine bracket, just so I could get the screwdriver down there flat. And the other thing I found that was helpful for adjusting that, and actually loosening the lock nut, but also adjusting it, was that I would turn the throttle a little bit with my right hand, and with my left hand get in with one of my long screwdrivers. So I got two of them here. But anyway, one smaller than the other. But yeah, a long screwdriver like that, got in there, and then I was okay. So that's what I had. I had the right carb. The fluid was rising, and I wanted to drive it down. And I got it pretty close where it was rising just slowly, and then I just started making really small incremental turns, and I got it now to where the two of them are staying together. So let's spark this thing up. There we go. And we'll see how it goes. And I'll get down here so you can see. So you can see they're staying together. So that's exactly right. So now they're synchronized. So now the next step is, let the engine cool. I'm gonna take off my little ports for my tool and put the screws back in, put the gas tank back on, hook up the correct hose, and take it out for a spin. But I'm going to do that tomorrow. Start the engine cold and take it for a spin. And I'm really hoping that solves the stuttering that I get, sputtering and stuttering that I get on this engine at about 3,000 RPM. It's just, it's unusable. You know, you can barely take off from a standing stop. You really got to ease into the throttle and ride the clutch just to get going. And getting going on a hill is really difficult. So I'm hoping this solves it. I'm hoping this isn't it, or this is it. And if it isn't, my next step, I had set the valves And I thought I did the exhaust on the left cylinder correctly, but I hear a slight ticking there. So if this doesn't do it, I'm going to take the top off and check the clearance again on all 4 valves. But and I'll end up doing that anyway this winter, but let's see how this goes. Hopefully this does it. So just a couple more things to finish off this video. I forgot to mention the adjusting nut on the or the lock nut on the adjusting screw is 8 millimeter. So that's what you're looking to do there. I snugged down on it. I didn't tighten it super tight because I didn't want to move the adjusting screw. And even after I did that, I rechecked the synchronization, and I hadn't moved the screw, and the synchronization was holding. It was still good. So that was good. The other was one other thing was the little nipples that I made up for the synchronization jars. My little tool, this is made from 5 millimeter brake line. And I didn't, I'd mentioned in the earlier part of the video that I'd tapped them. I had not tapped, I'd threaded these. So these are threaded with a 5 millimeter by 0.8 millimeter thread. And they just go in finger tight. And yeah, just got a length of brake line rod, 5 millimeter from Canadian Tire, and cut it up into 6 pieces. A couple for the head and 4 to make up the nipples on the mason jars. And that's that. The next thing I wanted to mention was just the adjustment. So when you're doing it, if the jar that you've got hooked up to the right carb is rising, then turn your adjuster counterclockwise. If it's falling, turn it clockwise. And that's how that should work, and that'll get that for you. So the last thing I want to mention is when I did have this going, I did notice that the jar for the left carb was kind of puffing a little bit. There was getting some cloudiness in there. So I was thinking I was getting some gas some gas coming back from the left carb. So I may still have the exhaust valve or the intake valve out of adjustment. And perhaps, the intake, it must be the intake, I'm guessing. But anyway, so I may have to readjust or recheck the adjustment on all the valves. I'll get the valve cover off and have a look. But tomorrow I'm just going to take it for a ride now that I got it synchronized and see what difference that made. And if that hasn't solved my stumbling problem, then I'm going to go after the exhaust. The exhaust and intake valve adjustments. Give that a shot.